More big news about the upcoming onslaught of driverless cars keep coming. First, we have news reports saying that the UK is planning on approving driverless taxis by next year. The Transport Secretary has confirmed they will fast-track self-driving pilots by spring of 2026. Second, there are signs Tesla will be launching full self-driving supervised in South Korea soon. They're hiring and beefing up their team to lay the foundation for FSD rollout. Third, Tesla has launched a dedicated webpage just for FSD, and they have a couple of new pieces of information. 3.8 billion miles have now been driven on FSD Supervised and is 54% safer than a human driver. Finally, Elon Musk announced that Dojo 2 is coming online later this year. Got Hans Nelson joining us. I really enjoy talking to Hans, especially when it comes to FSD, Robotaxi, and Dojo. Welcome so much, Hans. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I highly encourage people to check out his website or his YouTube channel, Hans C. Nelson. He does really good deep dive interviews, and he has a lot of knowledge to share about specifically these topics. Things are heating up. Full self-driving, robotaxi. Not only is Tesla expected to launch it this month, but we also are starting to see movement around the world. Here, this is a big surprise to everybody. Looks like that the UK is setting up that they're going to allow this to happen next year. Everybody keeps thinking that Europe is going to be really far behind. You know, yes, they have a lot of regulation, but I think the pressure's on for them to move faster than you realize. Here's reports saying that the self-driving cars is confirmed for UK roads next year, with motors able to hire driverless taxis. The Transport Secretary, the former Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, is taking a ride in the self-driving vehicle in that video there. Self-driving vehicles could be seen on the UK roads next year as a Labour Greenlights new pilot trials of autonomous vehicles in a move that could create 38,000 new jobs. They also talk about it losing jobs, by the way. Mm-hmm. But from 2026, self-driving cars without a safety driver could be available for people to ride in by booking a trip through popular ride-hailing apps. This is the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, confirmed that the government will be pushing forward with its pledge to fast-track self-driving pilots in spring of 2026. They'll be able to operate. So this is the confusing part. First, they're saying self-driving pilots without a driver. Now they're saying to operate small-scale taxi and bus-like services with a safety driver. So of course, it's probably you start off with that, and then eventually you get that by the second half. This will act as a precursor to the wider rollout of such vehicle technology before the Automated Vehicles Act becomes law in the second half of 2027. What you're thinking about that report there, Hans?
Well, just a reminder to the audience that after Brexit, the UK is no longer in the EU, but we've seen, a number of these efforts now, and it's like the competitive pressure among the individual member states of the EU and then just the broader region here with the UK is ramping up. Norway's got stuff that they're doing. The Netherlands has stuff that they're doing. Czech has something that they're doing. Like all these individual nations are saying, we're not going to wait for if they're in the EU, they're saying we're not going to really wait for the EU to figure out their stuff. We're just going to move ahead. I think this is a good, signal that everyone is now feeling this pressure and they want to move ahead. They want to be up to date with this technology. They want to, be able to have a framework on how to deal with it from a regulatory standpoint, but also to allow it to happen in their nations so that they don't have their citizens, up in arms that other people not that far away get to do this, but how come we can't? What's up with you, Mr. Regulator, Mr. Government? What's wrong? So that's, I think, the big takeaway, the big signal here. Then you've got the timeline is interesting that they are, trying to have something solid in place by 2027. They want to start this testing next year in 2026. That's not that far away. That's spring of 2026 is 6 to 12 months away, or summer is 12 months away. But yeah, we're moving into this timeline very quickly. And we're just going to continue to hear these types of news releases come out for lots more nations. The couple that we've had so far is really just the beginning of an avalanche of these types of announcements.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard for me to understand some people who think that it's going to be, a long time before driverless technology is adopted by the world. It's the opposite. Once you have one country approve it, like we're not quite there yet, I agree with you. But once we get one country to approve it, you got US, you got China. Do you really think that other countries can wait 3 to 5 years before they approve it? They need to act fast, maybe a year, 2 years behind, but they need to act fast.
Yeah, I think
So that's
the overall rollout, you can probably think about being very similar to the speed that Uber was able to expand
Yeah.
nationally and then globally. There's a few extra factors because the technology itself like requires, Uber was able to expand to cars that already existed, and we still aren't 100% clear on how autonomous vehicles themselves are going to scale up to the types of quantities that can reach, entire nations and
Right.
around the world, specifically because, I think a lot of governments are going to want there to have sort of a national champion in that space. And this is one of Larry Goldberg's points, is that he thinks that the Western market, the United States specifically, but then the EU, potentially the UK, that these are the most important markets for any individual player to win, because this is going to be the vast majority of where all the profits are made
Right.
from these autonomous robotaxi networks. But that really, if you look globally, there's going to probably end up being, you know, more local monopolies,
Smaller
and
players.
the
Yeah.
the governments are going to be the ones who like kind of box off like, this area is, we want it to be our company that wins autonomous vehicles here, which might mean that it does take them longer to get that service.
Mm.
But that protectionist instinct will be something that is also a barrier to autonomous vehicles really proliferating as quickly.
Okay, so as soon as the UK made that announcement, Uber jumped in and said that we're going to bring our trial, we're going to bring that forward to do driverless taxis in the UK. They have a partnership with Wave, so they're going to be doing that in London next year. No human safety driver at the wheel. The ride-hailing app Uber will work with the UK artificial intelligence firm Wave, which has been testing out the technology in the city streets with human oversight in line with current legislation. So that came after the UK government changed its rules about driverless cars once again. It was originally aiming for the tech to come to British roads in 2026, then the date was changed to the second half of 2027. But now it says it's introducing an accelerated framework for small autonomous bus and taxi-like commercial service to get them underway earlier. So this is bus and taxi-like small. So we don't know yet if this is the vehicles in Uber's trial will be available for customers' use, right? Whenever they say things like that, we're going to bring cars to that city, they don't necessarily mean that it's going to be available for customers. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yep.
Yep.
But it does highlight, Wave is a British company. And so it's kind of like not
What you were saying earlier.
necessarily Waymo. Maybe it's more like a Cruise or, one of those types of companies, but native to the UK. And so Uber's willingness to partner with that native player, I think, will give them a leg up as far as the regulatory favor, goes there. And this is something that I would say Uber maybe has a little bit of an advantage in globally in some of those other markets, where their willingness to partner with local providers and their
Yep.
existing presence and their existing relationships with these other governments could make, competition a little bit less attractive and a little bit less easy really for Tesla, as Tesla rolls out their robotaxi network around the world.
Yeah. I like what you're saying. I mean, in each of these countries, the smaller countries, they'll need to partner with a local provider probably. But I think if when Uber partners with somebody, that kind of means that that vendor does not have enough cars. Therefore, they want to
Yeah.
have the backdrop of human-driven cars just in case they, when I roll out 300 cars,
hmm
that's not enough.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to order a car, there has to be a human driver alternative if I don't have enough of my driverless cars. So that's who Uber is going to partner with.
But
Okay.
yeah, people just need
Announcements
to
galore.
also remember that, a lot of those markets are not going to be where most of the money in robotaxis ends up getting made.
So FSD Supervised is rumored to be launching in South Korea soon. Here you've got this news report from South Korea itself, saying that Tesla is hiring people to beef up its Korea team to kind of negotiate with the government, aiming for regulatory approval of FSD Supervised. They're recruiting cybersecurity insurance specialists, laying the technical foundation for FSD rollout. This is an actual article written in a South Korean news article, and basically says something very similar to what we just repeated there. But just to show you that this is kind of some truth to it. This is an actual news article from Korea, but yeah.
Yeah, it's one more market for FSD is not available in that many places yet. It's interesting to see it moving to South Korea before some of the other places. I think that's
like what do you mean?
Well, so yeah, like strategically, obviously some of the European markets Tesla would like to launch them there first, but obviously the regulations are prohibitive. And so, yeah, there's this complicated dance between where does Tesla want to launch next and where is the regulatory environment actually conducive to launch next. And so there are countries that would probably be lower priority for Tesla overall.
Right.
But since they are more accommodating, they can actually skip the queue and get Tesla to help, because the only reason I say this is because it does take, like you said, we've got to hire more people. There's got to be more interface with the government. Like there's an overhead to Tesla to launch FSD in each new market. It's relatively small, but it is also, engineering and brain capital that has to be spent on those things. And the Korean market is definitely a significant market for Tesla. So I'm not saying that, this is some backwater, no import market. But yeah, the fact that they're able to make this happen before a very large market like the EU is very significant. And the other thing is it's great to see it expanding there in the Asia Pacific region as well. So China has it now. If South Korea gets it, it could be that all of the Asia Pacific regions end up having this working there before really anyone in the EU gets access to it.
My suspicion is that there's governments that are chasing for this, while there might be government regulations that are slowing it down. There's other governments that really want this badly. I don't know if this is related at all, but do you know which country has the most investors in Tesla? I think relative to GDP or something like that. South Korea.
It wouldn't surprise me if it was South Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't think so. But okay. So the other thing that just happened is Tesla dropped a new web page dedicated to FSD. There's a whole page on its website. They revealed a few new pieces of information on it. 3.8 billion miles have been driven on FSD Supervised. FSD Supervised is 54% safer than a human driver when it's engaged, and it's trained on what amounts to over 100 years of anonymous real-world driving scenarios from Tesla's fleet of over 6 million vehicles. Tesla's fleet collectively experiences a lifetime of driving scenarios in 10 minutes. So that's a lot of data here. You want to address each one of these?
Yeah, it is a lot of data. It is, but at the same time as it being a lot of data, it's less than, we were trending at that much larger 10 million miles per day number during some of the free trials. And so the fact that we have now reduced off of that peak to this 3 million miles per day number is a little bit disappointing, I would say, in one sense, because you think, oh man, they're really not pushing the consumer FSD subscription and experience as hard. And that is one of the proxies for, how well are they doing on FSD. So if we were seeing that data and we were not seeing them accelerate towards the actual Robotaxi network, I would actually be somewhat concerned by that. But what it looks like from the outside is that they have decided to concentrate all of the main focus and the main push of both the software development, but also where they're thinking about where they're going to end up monetizing this product is within inside the Robotaxi network. And so I'm not overly concerned that we're not, seeing this larger number of miles per day driven on FSD right now. I think they have plenty of data to continue to develop the core product that is the robotaxi network. And I think there's a lot of complexity that they're probably dealing with related to making the robotaxi network work really well in Austin. For example, one of the things that my wife and I were talking about yesterday is at some point, Tesla is going to have their own native mapping solution. And you would think that that would be a requirement for anywhere that they are going to actually operate their robotaxi network. I think we've even talked about this before too. And this is not the same thing as having the HD maps that Waymo needs to operate, but they do need to have their Google Maps Plus level maps that says, hey, there's a big dip right here on this road. You actually can't drive normal speeds here. If you do, you're going to rip up the car. Or all sorts of that type of additional data. You can almost think of it as like a Waze overlay on Google Maps on steroids that is specific data for Tesla and for their robotaxi network. I think something like this is something that I've been watching for a long time. When do we, like, this is obviously part of what it's going to take to deliver a robotaxi service at scale. So they're probably developing something like that. I think the likelihood is very, very high, and they probably have been developing it for a while, but I think something like that is probably taking some focus from really just trying to maximize. Like, they have way more just normal FSD driving data than they need to develop some of these other things that are important parts of rolling out the robotaxi network. And so the fact that it's 3 million today instead of 10 million, either way, it's more than enough to do the hard work that is necessary. And Elon is obviously all in on robotaxis. That has been the apparent shift in strategy over the last several years that we heard in the Walter Isaacson biography. And many retail investors breathed a huge sigh of relief that Franz and Lars and all of these people were able to convince Elon not to just go double down all in autonomy or nothing. But all of the moves that we've seen since then seem to be that, yes, actually we are doubling down all in on robotaxis. And so that really overshadows whether it's, trying to massively increase the number of models and the production size of the fleet of Tesla today. And it also overshadows the consumer FSD development as well.
Yeah.
So these two things they're important. They're important long term, but they're taking a short term backseat to the Austin robotaxi launch.
I don't know how many people I've spoken to. I tell them, have you tried FSD? And he goes, oh, yeah, I've tried it. And then I ask him, when did you try it? It was when they did the free trials. And the problem was when they did free trials, it was the older version of FSD. And I said, no, you got to do it on a hardware 4, if you have a hardware 4 car, and you got to do the newest version. And then you will now see the real value. So I think that this free trials expiring was the older version. And so, do they need to get 6 billion miles? Or maybe they don't feel like they need that anymore. What they just need is more time on the compute. And so it's possible that version 14 is pretty well there already. Like, you don't need, we don't need to increase the miles. Because if they did, they would just offer a new free trial at this point with existing FSD. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the reason to offer a free trial at this point is not necessarily because you need more driving data. It would be because you're trying to increase the take rate on FSD and try to get more people to subscribe. But if they think that that is going to be, pennies on the dollar compared to what they're going to earn on the robotaxi network, then they'll just say, like, yes, that is something that we need to do eventually, but it's not the priority today. Yeah. We have way more things, way bigger fish to fry, way more things on our plate, and we'll do that, but not now.
Gotcha. Well, that's the question. So if you thank you for that. You saying that it's not about data anymore, because if it isn't about data anymore, it's binary as far as I'm concerned. Like, once they showed that FSD robotaxi is happening, real robotaxi is happening with regular cars, and once they, maybe next year, when they start introducing regular cars can go in, or they start showing that I can sleep in my car while it's taking me here in other cities, not for Robotaxi, but my own use. FSD will skyrocket at that point. There's no need to pitch it today.
Yes.
We're not
Yeah.
quite there yet.
When you roll out FSD unsupervised instead of supervised, that's
the one point.
is the point at
Yeah.
which the FSD subscription, they can change it to whatever pricing model makes sense for them at that point in time. Like adoption just goes through the roof. But for whatever management reasons, they have decided that Robotaxi is
It's the
the
priority.
priority over FSD unsupervised. And so we just have to trust that management is making that decision for a reason, and that when it makes sense, they will roll this out. And when they do, it's going to be, that is the additional, optional upside. Whatever Robotaxi monetization looks like, not everyone is going to want to put their cars on the Robotaxi network, but there's a lot of people who have never purchased FSD one-time purchase that have Teslas, whether they're subscribed at $99 a month or not. I think it's very, very, very unlikely that you can get FSD unsupervised for $99 a month. And so there's a ton of this, fleet that's out there that they can charge a much higher price than $99 a month for FSD supervised. Those cars are not necessarily going to go on the Robotaxi network. So we're going to be monetizing the Robotaxi network, and that's going to be a huge source of revenue. But then there's this other source of revenue that's going to be incremental subscription for FSD unsupervised. Both of those two things are going to explode at the same time, roughly in the grand scheme of things.
Just reminding me two things that Elon said. The first one he said was, it's actually a good thing that we don't have more sales of FSD for the hardware 3 cars, because if they're going to go and upgrade everybody, it's a good thing we don't. So I don't think that they want to promote FSD quite yet for that reason. And then 2, he did say, didn't he, that, oh gosh, I forgot the second point. Okay, let's move on. So let's take a look at this website that they've launched that's specifically for FSD, just so you can see this. It's about time, right? You got to focus just on the AI. And this is something that no other car, no other vehicle can have. They need to promote it. They have to show that these is the things that this car can do that no other car can do. It's already 54% safer. It is already at the point where it's much more valuable.
Yeah. And this is a great showcase of the technology that they have on their website. Honestly, what took them so long? We should have had this quite a while ago. I mean, what took them so long is they were working on making the technology work at this level first. Because like version 13, whether it's 13.2.8, 13.2.9, the latest versions of even version 12, they are so much better than they were. But while on the one hand, yes, they're so much better than they were, they're really just now getting to the point where normie Tesla drivers are really comfortable using it, and it's a positive user experience. The previous versions of the software were extremely satisfying for those of us who are nerds, and we're those early adopters. We want to be at the forefront of trying what this technology is and seeing, how does it work? What are all the quirks? Where is it great? Where does it suck? And tracking that over time. But most people don't care about that. Most people are not us. And so it really needed to be at the level that it's at today to really be ready for most consumers. And then it's only going to get better from here. So now we're, probably at a point where it's good for the early majority. And then it's going to be continuing to improve so that it's actually good for not only the early majority, but the whole majority, even into the long tail.
That reminds me of what I was going to say. What Elon did say also, that I think he emphasized, right, that the actual value of FSD is when you can actually sleep in a car, when you can do your makeup in your car. And I think that they're thinking that that's coming sooner than you realize. They're hinting at it already. And so what's the point of trying to promote FSD supervised now when you said earlier, FSD unsupervised is the real value and it's coming soon? That's okay.
This actually brings up one additional point. I would not be surprised if we've seen a reduction in the number of miles that people are using on FSD with the severity of the driver nag that they have right now.
Yeah.
That the driver nag is
Yes.
so pronounced that that
Yeah.
is major friction on using the system, and Elon has talked about wanting to,
Hmm.
improve that. They've gotta make sure that it's gonna be safe. They want it to be at least that 54% safer than human, if not more. And so they've gotta, you know, figure out how to thread this needle. But as they dial back that driver monitoring system, then it makes more sense to try, like, if you say, "Here, have a free trial." Oh, and when you use the system, you're like, "Well, it's an amazing driver, but it's annoying as all
Yeah.
get out."
That's where we're at. Yeah.
That's not, a time you wanna be
Yeah.
offering more free trials and increasing the
Good
exposure.
points. Yeah, very good points. So over time, they're gonna, as they transition from FSD supervised to unsupervised, what he said he'll do is that they'll reduce the annoying, nags that are happening there. As that reduces, then they can promote it more. Okay. In the meantime, there's work on Dojo, and this is part of one of the important leapfrogs in the FSD's success. And Elon posted this in the middle, just right in the middle, which is weird, just right in the middle of his feud with Trump. He posted this: a Tesla Dojo AI training computer making progress. We start bringing Dojo 2 online later this year. It takes 3 major iterations for new tech to be great. Dojo 2 is good. Dojo 3 will be great. So Dojo 2 is coming, but they had this article that Tesla AI dropped. So they must have felt that this was a very important, that they're proud of something. They are able to detect a computer node that is defective in Tesla Dojo. And they explained that these silent data corruptions is caused by manufacturing defects. And then now they're able to detect it. And then if they can detect it ahead of time, that's much better, because sometimes they'll do multi-week trainings and then it comes out as incorrect because they didn't realize that some of the nodes were defective. So they felt that this was very important, that they created that they were able to find these.
Yeah, so these are the types of engineering challenges that, make doing massive training or inference, either one, running these super compute clusters at large scale for long periods of time. There's always, some little unknown problem that you didn't foresee pops up here or there, and you have to solve that problem before you can really be able to utilize your system at 100% uptime and 100% efficacy and efficiency. So, or close to. So it's great to see that Tesla is really pedal to the metal on using Dojo as much as possible, that they're solving these problems as they arise. But this is definitely, one of the challenges of creating a system that you're really trying to compete with NVIDIA, that NVIDIA has been dealing with these types of challenges for a long time. They have figured out how to run these systems at scale. Um, and so that's the race that they're in. But I'm really glad to see that, and expect to see Elon and Tesla continue to invest money in the Dojo project, because it is a great insurance policy on their ability to do the types of training that they want to do. One of the things that I think this really has a potential still to be a big deal, because it is built specifically to handle training around video or labeling around video. And there's not an architecture that is purpose built for video other than Dojo yet that I am aware of. And the amount of data that you're dealing with when you're working with video is much different than when you're working with text or audio. And so that is part of the underlying fundamental difference between the way that Dojo is built and the way that, these NVIDIA GPU clusters are built as well. But they're still using, the NVIDIA chips, to do a lot of that training, even though they're much less efficient in some ways, because trying to do these large jobs is kind of beyond the reach of what Dojo is up to yet. So it'll be great to see. And this is, what they're talking about is Dojo 1, I assume. So, the fact that we'll have Dojo 2, hopefully that'll solve a bunch of problems this year. The TSMC has been working on several different processes, and Dojo 1 is built on kind of like the classic process that NVIDIA has been using for a long time for their GPUs. This Dojo 2 is going to be built on a new process that allows them to do some things that the old one didn't do. And then there's the Dojo 3 that Elon is talking about. That's even an updated process over what Dojo 2 uses. And so it allows them to arrange the chips in different ways and to connect the chips together more efficiently. And that, they are kind of, because the Dojo project is a little bit smaller, they're not building nearly as many Dojo cabinets as they are building NVIDIA cabinets. They can actually use these processes that are more at the forefront of the edge of development before NVIDIA is going to use them, because NVIDIA needs to have all those kinks worked out before they can adopt those newer processes from TSMC. And so that's going to be one of the benefits that Dojo has to be at the leading edge. But when you're at the leading edge of these new processes, that's where you're also going to run into more of the technical types of challenges, like the ones that they're talking about here in this paper. So there's benefits, drawbacks, but it's fun to see. And I do expect Dojo 3 will be an exceptional product, hopefully very competitive with what NVIDIA offers at that point in time. And I would love to see the percentage of Tesla's overall compute that is Dojo, grow relative to what is NVIDIA over time. And there's a good shot at that.
Sounding like it. I mean, Elon's getting much more confident about this. Dojo 3 sounds like when he thinks that it's going to surpass, it's going to be better than NVIDIA, to the point that it's worth it for Tesla to switch over to Dojo 3. Right now, Dojo 2 is good. But for them to post this article, this is a breakthrough that they felt that was important. And they actually even compared it to, that this is problems that not only Tesla's facing, but Meta, Google, they're also facing this as well. Hyperscalers have this issue, supercomputers. So here we are. Tesla's in this game as well. People forget that Tesla's actually a supercomputer manufacturer, just like NVIDIA is, which is just yet another major business Tesla's doing and could one day become massive, important. Thank you so much, Hans. If you want to learn more about Dojo, he's got lots of good videos there going deep dive in that. Appreciate you, Hans. Thanks, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.